If you're in a sales career or looking to break in, there is just no avoiding the fact that you're gonna have some pain along the way. You're gonna have some big wins and you're gonna have some big losses, and there's just no avoiding it. But it's also why the career is often paid more than almost any W-2 job out there. And it's also why I left a stable engineering career to take a chance on getting higher upside in tech sales specifically. Today, I'm gonna talk about 3 things I do to stay sane throughout the high highs and low lows that sales can provide. And I also wanted to take a quick minute to pause and thank you because we just passed 4,000 subscribers. I really appreciate the support, and it's been awesome to see that a lot of you are getting value out of this channel. Many of you have even commented that you've been able to break in because of the content that we're putting out, so really appreciate the support. But with that out of the way, let's get into the 3 things that I do that keep me sane in tech sales. The first absolutely has to do with money. Again, the reason that I got into tech sales was for the money, and I'll explain that a lot further. But there's an old adage or old saying in tech sales that you should live off of your base and save your commission. And I think that's absolutely trash advice. I save a substantial amount of my base salary and also save a substantial amount of my commission. That may change over time as I get a house, I'll have kids in the future, whatever it might be. But again, even going back to my time as an engineer, what I hated about it certainly was the ability to not earn more regardless of how hard I worked. But there were a lot of things tied to that, like the debt that I owed for my student loans. And I just sat there on a scheduled timer and basically had to wait to keep earning check after check to keep paying a portion of that away until they were ultimately paid off, even though I paid it off aggressively. And when I came into tech sales, and again, you live your own life, you choose and do what you want to do. But even when I came into sales, I had a great year, my second year ever in tech sales. I still was living very frugally and setting aside money. At this point, I'm debt free. I'm fortunate to be in that position. But also now, when I'm in very high stakes sales, I have deals that take many, many months to either win or lose. I'm much more able to detach from the outcome, having saved a substantial amount of my income, because God forbid, in the worst case scenario, I do lose my job. I have enough runway for multiple years. And not only is that comforting to know in an absolute worst case scenario when the economy is like it is right now, but also again, I don't get caught up and come to a prospect and feel desperate, like I've got to win this deal. I'm still putting in the work, I'm still working incredibly hard and aggressively, but I'm not coming from a mindset of scarcity, and I'm coming from a place of being able to be truly helpful and consultative to clients while still doing the things I need to do to close and win business. But I'm also able to play much more free, able to be much more authentic and effective because I'm not so much worried about my next paycheck to pay for the house that I can barely afford, with the brand new car that costs me $1,500 a month, with all of these different things that are completely unnecessary, at least at this stage of my life, where I want to work really hard today and enjoy those down the line. And as I transition to that second point, just reiterating, if you're in that position where you're looking to break into tech sales, absolutely be motivated by the money, want more. And yes, I've learned as I've started to make more and more in sales to be able to splurge on myself a little bit. But I think the best advice you can give yourself is in the first maybe 2 to 3 years, living very, very frugally and setting that money aside. Because if anything, it's much easier to still save the same percentage as you double and triple your income than it is to spend a lot up front and then try and curtail that on the back end and start to take away actively from the lifestyle that you've paid, even though you can technically afford it, but not be able to really save anything substantial on the back end. Now, my second point, you have to hear me out because I'm gonna get more specific. Obviously, I'm gonna take into account the fact that fitness and diet is a prerequisite. I'm not here to tell you how to do that. That's outside of the scope of this conversation. And for what it's worth, I used to be a national team athlete and I ran my first marathon last year. That is not a requirement for you to have a healthy, insane sales career. I'm just pointing out the fact that my athletic endeavors are a little bit more extreme than the average person. But that being said, the biggest thing that I implemented over the last year was actually forcing myself to go to a sauna for anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes at least 3 times a week. And yes, a sauna is great. It's very relaxing in of itself. But I think the biggest point is this is literally right now one of the only places that I cannot take my phone. My phone will break if it is in the sauna too long, and so it forces me to absolutely disconnect from my phone and have no access to that whatsoever. And I'm certainly trying to put more and more measures into place to disconnect from technology as a whole where I can. As you might imagine, working full-time, building this channel as well, it's difficult to do that. So the sauna is a very routine and consistent place that week over week, I can get 3 to 4 to maybe even 5 sessions a week where I'm completely disconnected, in addition to all the health benefits that a sauna can provide. And the last thing I'd add on this point is that it's really not that expensive. I'm a member at a gym that's $38 a month that has a sauna. And I would say, again, if you're in sales, if you're pushing for that your health is a huge prerequisite to your success, and it should absolutely not be something that's an afterthought as well. But nonetheless, figure out what's best for you and make sure it's something that you're doing minimally, I would say 3 times a week. And this third point is a huge one for me, and there's no sweet spot here, so I'm gonna talk through how my career has changed throughout this process. Because when I first broke in, to some extent, I'm gonna say I think this was necessary, but I really prided myself on being available a lot. I really prided myself on how quickly I returned responses in Slack and email and all these different things. But as I've gone to higher and higher and more strategic levels in sales, you realize that a lot of that is not necessary. And in summary of this point that keeps me sane in sales, I make a really concerted effort to try and work very hard 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. There are many times where I do have to work more than 8 hours in a day, but I'm not working more than 8 hours at a time. So I'll go to the gym for 2 hours, I'll do something to break it up. If I have to come back to it later that night, I will, and that's okay. But also, in addition, I do not work Saturdays, and if anything, and I have to work on the weekend, it's Sundays. But I make sure I'm taking a day off. I'm not even opening emails on Saturdays. That is my day off unless there's a very rare exception. In tandem with this, a lot of the things that I do, one of the biggest things I did this year that actually really helped me, I turned off Slack notifications altogether. So I'm not getting interrupted when I'm writing an email or when I'm trying to do research on an account or when I'm preparing for a call. I'm not getting that little tick sound from Slack that's interrupting my day. And it's on me to check Slack. And all that to say, in doing this, what's been crazy is you realize that like 95+% of messages, especially those coming through on the weekends, are almost not critical at all. Certainly when it comes to like talking to prospects, the prospects that you think would be beneficial to send an email on Saturday night are just like you, and they're probably trying to take time off. So if I'm at a bar on a Saturday night and I get an email that like someone's giving me an update to something we talked about this week, I'm like, whatever, I'll read it Monday, and then I might even forget about it, right? And that's how crazy I used to be. I used to sit there and pride myself on responding all the time. Or if I got jammed up on a Friday, I'd work, through the night or into Saturday and, sending out emails midday Saturday in response to show that I'm like on the ball. No one really cares. And it's amazing when you really put up strong boundaries, how much you can force yourself to get done, and also how much people will respect your time when you're making a point to be very intentional about how you use it so it's very effective. But I'm sure there's a ton I could get into, and I'd love your feedback in the comments below. And if you're trying to experience the high highs and low lows of sales, 1, welcome, and 2, we have a free lesson in the description if you want to check out how we've helped others break into tech sales. You've got to find what works for you, but putting up clear boundaries, having a minimum acceptable framework for your fitness and health is absolutely critical to being successful in sales and not to be ignored. And arguably, I think starting and the most important is the financial foundation. When you have that cushion to, in the worst case scenario, know that if you got fired, you would be okay for a year, for 2 years, for 10 years, your life and your effectiveness in the job becomes that much better. When you don't need that paycheck for your car payment, when you don't need that deal to close to do whatever it is immediately, I feel you're able to be much more effective, much more authentic, and actually even work harder and get better results in the end. But appreciate your time as always. Thank you again. We are now over 4,000 subscribers, which is insane, having started this channel like a year and a half ago. I really appreciate it. I'm really glad that you're getting a lot of value out of the content, and we'll see you in our next video. Thanks.